so we're going to start with this, what happened to Soul Eater. I figured I'd do some anime cringe. My boys and girls, dude, we got to do some anime cringe. It's the King Jiffy Coats channel, bro. It's King Jiffy Coats is grind, dude. I do some gaming, I do some lore, I do some anime cringe. That's what I do, dude. I do gaming, anime cringe, and that's pretty much my shit. Every once in a while, I will dip my toes into my true fucking opinions and things. You get some, probably some hot political takes. The type of stuff that you like to juice your penises on. But today, we are going to be looking at what happened to Soul Eater. Now, the main thing that I want to kind of make apparent is I tried to watch Soul Eater, I don't know, time ago. I didn't watch Soul Eater because everyone says that Soul Eater is good. Now, I couldn't get into this shit. I couldn't. I tried. I just could not get into it for some reason. Now, there is a prequel show called, Fire Force or some shit. That is so good. Fire Force is incredibly good, and Soul Eater is equivalent, the original, and then Fire Force somehow is going to tie into Soul Eater, and I don't know what happened to Fire Force. I would love to see Fire Force come back. The last season was really good. I want to see what they do with it. I want to see how it ties into this. But I don't know. I know this was a benchmark for animation for quality-wise, so I know that there was a lot of reasons why this is really good. I just never could get into it. But let's get into this, see what's going on with Soul Eater, and let's go from here.
What happened to Soul Eater? Soul Eater is an anime staple that led tons of young fans to get into anime. And to this day, it's still one of the most iconic anime in the industry. But that same anime made a bunch of changes to the canon story, and it never fully adapted the entire plot. So almost 2 decades later, fans of the series are still waiting on a new, complete anime. And with Okubo completing his other manga Fire Force in that time gap, it's left enough time now where people are wondering where Soul Eater ranks.
So, Fire Force is done, I guess? I didn't know that.
Among classics like Naruto, Bleach, and even One Piece.
Naruto is ass. Naruto is so garbage. Naruto is the dumbest anime to ever exist. Naruto sucks. Naruto takes 8 penises and just it just sucks consistently, dude. Consistently is garbage.
So in this video, having finally read the entire manga for the first time, I want to share my first impressions of the series as a whole, dive into some of its underlying issues, but also explain why Soul Eater is already one of my all-time favorite manga. But before we talk about
so again, dude, I actually try to get into this shit, and I think it has some interesting concepts. The art's pretty good. It gets a little fan servicey real early, and I've kind of got a little more desensitized where I can handle fan service a lot better than I could. And when I first started watching anime, I'm like, bro, no, too much shitties. And now I don't care, dude. I really don't care. It's something I just ignore. But I remember this one starts very heavily fan servicey, and the ideas in it I think are pretty cool. The idea that so you got the main you got one of these people, and then there's weapons. The people are weapons too, so then they change into weapons. And I thought that was a cool idea, and it's interesting. The world is what kind of always set me off in a weird place on Soul Eater. I just couldn't get into it. There's just something about it.
About the manga, we need to talk about the anime. Mainly because, for the most part, this is how a majority of people discovered the series. So the manga was serialized in 2004. The anime would release later in 2008. The anime, made by Studio Bones, is still one of the most popular anime to this day. Even people who have never really gotten into the manga will tell you that it's a great anime. But there are just a few caveats. First of all, this anime ran into the same issue as another shonen anime around the same time, Shaman King. The issue being this. So the anime started in 2008 and ended in 2009, but the manga wouldn't end until 2013. Naturally, as you can imagine, the people at Bones had to come up with an anime original ending. That isn't to say the anime is bad. The earlier half of the anime is mostly faithful to the manga. As I'm sure you've heard, the animation from Bones in this show is gorgeous, especially considering this is a somewhat older show. And the voice acting in the anime really brings the characters and their goofy chemistry to life. I've only seen bits and pieces of it, but the English dub does a great job too, as far as I can tell. But that doesn't mean the anime is perfect. Add the original ending together with the fact that it never adapted a lot of the later manga material, and fans of the series still haven't received a proper adaptation of the full canon.
I feel like this has happened a lot, and this is kind of like something, because used to be the way they would do it is they'd make it like come out weekly, and it was like a ridiculous amount of episodes. It was like 24 to like 50 episodes, and they would just like crank these bitches out. They just like they shot their shot as much as they could. And now we have like a little bit different of a setup, because it seems like Japan has even moved over to like the 12 episode seasons, and the seasons are actually like full arcs, and if they're longer than 12 episodes, it's to cover the full arc. And it just seems like they're being more faithful to a lot of these mangas and trying to adapt them the best they can in much better ways. But because I think that they've noticed that the higher production value on good anime, the better the turnout. And we're starting to see a lot better adaptations in that regard. But back in like the 2000s, everything was trying to hit that weekly spot. They were trying to like compete. It was very much like your fucking sitcoms here in America.
Story. So if you're someone who leans more towards anime, then you don't really have a problem. You can watch the anime and get the basic gist of the story, even if you're missing out on the true ending. And considering how good the anime looks, it's more than worth watching all 51 episodes. Oh, and the openings are bangers, so you'll want to watch those too. But if you're not a casual fan and you're interested in the manga, then that's an entirely different question. Because the manga goes on for 4 years after the anime ends, meaning there's a lot that happens after the anime. Which raises the question, is it worth investing in the manga? And like most people will tell you, the answer is a resounding yes. But before I say more on that, make sure to like the video if you're enjoying it so far. It's the easiest way to support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you.
I looked a lot different.
So I do know that like what might happen, the studio that's doing Firewatch, because Firewatch pause you fucking piece of shit. Firewatch supposedly is a prequel to Soul Eater. So yeah, I want to see. I think the studio that's working on Firewatch, if they were smart about it and they finish off Firewatch, get like good numbers on Firewatch, they could then move and redo Soul Eater. And I think that it would be kind of a monumental task to try to redo Soul Eater because of how much nostalgia is in here. But I think if they just like re-resed a lot of these older ones, released these, and then started where the show stopped being accurate, I think that'd be a good way to do it. Oh, I forgot to turn the volume back on. I'm a silly boy.
Support the channel, and it helps spread the video to other viewers like you. So there's a lot of reasons why people love Soul Eater, and one of the more underappreciated elements is the world it takes place in. Ask anyone what makes this world special, and they'll probably tell you about the gothic themes or the dark tones. Which is all true. Being spooky is kind of Soul Eater's whole identity, and it's not completely out of pocket to say it's basically like Halloween Town the manga. But what I like even more about the world of this story is how much it reflects the time it takes place in. Aesthetically speaking, I would say Shaman King is the most 2000s manga. But as far as what is actually in the story, I kind of think...
Dude, fucking... one of my problems, and one of the reasons I can't get into Soul Eater is this shit just reminds me of 2000s. It pulls me back to like elementary school and middle school. It's like when everybody had fucking tech decks. Do you guys remember tech decks? You had the little stupid skateboards that you played around on your desk, and then you get them taken by the teachers. It just reminds me of like the art styles there. It's like DC shoes, all that stuff. It's so in your face 2000s. It's watching a truck drive by and having Calvin pissing on something in the sticker on the back of the window. It is so 2000s. It gets kind of painful. It's like the movie Howard the Duck. Howard the Duck 1 isn't that great of a movie. I enjoy it because it's one of those movies that's so bad to me it's good. But it's also like Howard the Duck in the 80s, and let's see how much 80s we can throw into this movie. It puts me in the same position. And I think it's one of those things that I'm not as nostalgic of that design of that world choice of that a lot of people are. And I look back at like the 2000s and I'm like, damn, bro, that's kind of mad cringe, bro. And it just sets me off in a weird place. Like the intro is very, it's like the people who made Gorillas, dude. It reminds me of the animation for the Gorillas videos.
That award goes to Soul Eater, which is tricky because it does technically go on until 2013, but a lot of the stuff you see early on stays true to the later story. It's not its entire identity, but there's a lot of early 2000s stuff in this story. The characters riding skateboards, casual games of basketball at a time some consider one of the best eras of the NBA. You also have characters blindly ignoring everyone else as they listen to music on their plugged-in headphones. Yeah, remember when people still had to plug them in? It's easy to read this manga and know the time it was being made. So that, combined with all that gothic stuff, makes Soul Eater's world one of my favorites. Another thing I love about Soul Eater is the art style. I won't go too in-depth on this topic since I already covered it in my previous video, but Okubo definitely has one of my favorite art styles from any manga. There's a pretty big shift in the art style early on, but from there it stays pretty consistent. It comes off as simplistic at first, but what Okubo may lack in detail he makes up for in killer character designs and choreography. It's not quite on par with something like Dragon Ball, but it's the same idea. Okubo focuses less on detail in favor of action and character expression. As a result, Soul Eater's art style makes the manga instantly recognizable and also perfectly complements the lighthearted and often goofy tone of the story.
That is something, even though like it's very 2000s, the art style I do have to say is nice. It's just I think the 2000s shit is what pulled me out. The fact that I was watching it, I'm like, this is like a Gorillaz music video, and it like pulled me out. But it like the Gorillaz music video videos back in the day were still very, very good. It's like this weird. I think for me, it just like puts it's one of those weird that it's just like too much of that time period, and it's like of that time period, not like in a way where it's like, oh man. It's a product of its time. It's immature. It's immature. No, that shit always annoys me. It's like, dude, you're just being fucking obtuse and trying to hate shit. But for me, it was just like the nostalgia of that time period. I don't have like real strong nostalgia of the 2000s, even though I should, because I'm like I'm like millennial or some shit. I think I'm a millennial. It's like Gen Z, I think, started in 2000. I don't know when the fucking cutoff point for Gen Z and millennial is. I don't care. But it just was, for me, it's like not that nostalgic, but I still think that the art style is really good and the action was really good. It's just like when it starts doing the skateboarding and shit, I'm just out.
Now, speaking of characters, I think most people would agree this is probably the best part of the story. First off, you have Soul and Maka, the two lead characters of the story. Soul is the chill character that's into music and doesn't want to be a tryhard. Maka, on the other hand, is the model student who's kind of the nerd of the group. The two complement each other really well, and their chemistry is a big part of why Soul Eater is so easy to read. You also have Death the Kid, the heir to the Grim Reaper who fights people with his two partners that can turn into pistols. Besides his cool fights, he's also just
He's got the coolest weapon. Anytime there's guns, dude, you know I'm gonna be there. I'm a big gun guy. I like guns.
Goofy character that's so absurdly serious that it's actually unserious. His gag of wanting everything to be perfectly balanced and symmetrical isn't always that funny, but it's certainly iconic and it makes his character stand out. And of course, then you have Black Star, who, let's face it, is probably everyone's favorite. He's the classic example of main character syndrome, except there's a lot of times where he really does feel like the main character. Where other main characters might practice humility, Black Star has no problem declaring he's the best. But not in like an annoying way like Bakugo. More in like a funny way, like when a 7-year-old says he can totally do a backflip, eats it, and then tries it again anyway. Oh, and he also has the best fight in the series. But I won't get into that for obvious spoiler reasons. There's a ton of other great characters like Stein and Medusa, who is an amazing villain by the way. But I think you get the idea. Actually, now that I've mentioned Medusa, let's talk about the one thing that I think holds Soul Eater back. So as I'm sure you know, Okubo's next big manga after Soul Eater is Fire Force. And more often than not, People will tell you they dropped Fire Force because they didn't like the characters.
What?
But people who love Fire Force will tell you that even if some of the characters aren't that great, the story is godly. Soul Eater, I think, has almost the complete opposite problem.
This is world.
Yeah, dude, I would agree because the story's kind of boring and like compared to Fire Force, the story, Fire Force story is amazing, dude. Now, I think it might be right that the characters aren't all
Some of the most
memorable.
iconic in all of Eater,
I think like the characters in Fire Force are just so like some of them are really forgettable, some of them are kind of cringe, but like the thing about Fire Force is the world I think is just so much better. I think the artistically the world is really good in Soul Eater, but I never felt like I don't know, it just never felt right, dude. It just kind of felt like you were on this adventure with these guys, and I would kind of get lost in the sauce and not really know what I was supposed to be caring about, and then I would like zone out, and all of a sudden an episode's gone by and I have no idea what's going on. And that didn't happen to me with Fire Force, but that definitely happened to me with Soul Eater.
I think has almost the complete opposite problem. While Soul Eater's characters are some of the most iconic in all of manga, the story is far from perfect. Early Soul Eater is amazing. That first arc or so where Medusa has her plot to attack the school, absolutely loved it. After that, the pacing starts to get kinda funky. As a matter of fact, I tweeted a while ago how I thought the pacing in later Soul Eater is kinda bonkers. After the Big Bash arc, I still think it's pretty good. In fact, I think Okubo did a really good job with how he handled the raid on Baba Yaga Castle. But it's after this arc that I think the pacing starts to go all over the place. And when I finally finished the manga, I was kinda just left with this feeling that Okubo didn't exactly plan as much of the overall plot as he should have. To be fair, there's a lot of ways this worked in Okubo's favor. For example, I'm sure he always planned for Black Star and Mifune to have a big rematch. But I got the impression that he never intended to make Mifune a super important character beyond that. Hence why he's sort of forced back into the story via arachnophobia. But fortunately, he still handled it well, and it led to what I would say is the best fight in the story. In other ways,
I like how he was like, I'm not gonna go into the fight because I don't want to do spoilers, and then instantly goes into the fight, instantly brings it up as a crutch point.
this didn't work out so much. So for example, you have all the stuff with Ibon. Like, we learn there's all these artifacts, and then we learn they were created by Ibon, and then Noah shows up, and then Noah leaves, and then we get a mention of Death and all the other warlords, but it's never really explained in detail. Something like that is an example of how I think Okubo tried.
A good example of why I don't think this world works as well, and you can go to a world that I think does this like crazy over the top world better, is Welcome to Demon School, and then whatever the dude's name is. There's a show called Welcome to Demon School, and it's about this kid who gets bought by a demon, or sold by his parents to a demon, and is now that gonna be that demon's grandson. And the world building in this fucking like story, I've only watched the anime, but the world building is insane. All the characters, all the depths of this world, everything seems to work toward this common goal. And it just seems every day, every time you watch a new episode, you feel like you're peeling a little bit more back about this world. You're getting a little bit more info, a little bit more allure is put on the old demon king, and will the main character end up becoming the Demon King? And there's all this stuff that like works toward it. When I'm watching, and I feel like there's a lot of inspiration in Welcome to Demon School from Soul Eater. It's just about what. It's like I feel like it does it better. It does that wacky world building so much better because it's taking inspiration from some of the other anime that did world building better, like One Piece. But it's like using the stylistic choices that Soul Eater used to make this grander, better world. And I just feel like Soul Eater was like, it was like a lot of pretty visuals and a lot of like cool shit that didn't really feel like it built on anything. And again, I didn't get that deep into the anime, so I don't know if it changes or if it gets better. But for me, it just left something to be lacking.
Tried to add layers to the lore of the world, but never really had the time or preparation to properly do so. I also think it's weird how irrelevant witches come to be later on. And I say weird because they're always part of the plot, but also not really. Like, you have Medusa and Arachne, who are kinda just villains that happen to be witches. Like, the whole witch society versus Death City thing isn't really a major part of their motivation. And the witches do end up being a big part of the ending. But to me, it feels like witches are a big part in the beginning, considering how you need their souls to make death sites, and then we learn they have their own little city, and then that's kind of it. I'm also just not all that crazy with how Okubo handled Medusa, Krona, and the Kishin in the very end. They were all propped up to certain expectations, but all of their arcs kind of feel incomplete. The ending is just a mixed bag for me in general. It kind of feels like that one Daffy Duck cartoon where he's pitching a story, and the guy's like, okay, and then what happened? Alright, and then what happened? And then what happened? It gets to be a bit much. But don't let me fool you. Despite the later part of the story, Soul Eater is still one of my all-time favorites. Like, I started this manga and was like, okay, now I see why this is some people's entire identity. It was crazy how fast.
Yeah, so again, dude, that was my problem. It was a lot of and then. And even early on, you can feel that and then. And it just was like kind of just started stacking on top of each other. And that's where I was out, dude. That's where I looked at the door and I exited the orgy.
I realized that Soul Eater was becoming a huge part of my identity as a manga fan. I fell in love with the characters and the weird world they lived in, and despite its flaws, I was addicted to this story all the way back in Chapter 1. It's for these reasons and more why it's easy to see why Soul Eater holds the place that it does. The manga and the anime have made it a classic.
But the problem right now with this video is this is not what I expected out of the video. I'm not getting anything I like. Here's the biggest fucking issue. It's like, what happened to Soul Eater, right? What happened to Soul Eater? And he starts it off with a bunch of like great points about the manga keeping going, all this other stuff. Touches on Fire Force, but then just talks about how much he likes Soul Eater. This isn't like I came into this to see what's going on, dude. What's going on? What's some of your speculation? What's some of your thoughts? What's going on with Fire Force to maybe lead up to the maybe eventuality of a remake of Soul Eater? Like where's some like ideas? You're just kind of talking about how much you like it and not the ties to it, because like it's been stated that Fire Force is a prequel to Soul Eater, right? So there is a possibility if there's another Fire Force season that's good and it's remains popular. I think it's popular. I don't fucking know what's popular or not. But it could then lead to another Soul Eater, but you're not talking about any of that. It's just talking about how much you like it, which seems like a different video than what you presented at the beginning.
While it would later be tied into Fire Force for a number of reasons, it's funny how the negative parts of Fire Force's reputation have never really had any serious impact on Soul Eater. It just goes to show how special this series really is. Which is why, whether it's the anime, the manga, or both, you need to check out this series.
Well, he said negative aspects and then showed that clip. He showed that picture of the chick who's always accidentally losing her clothes. And if it's like the fan service in Fire Force that's the problem, dude, Soul Eater has it just as bad. I swear to God, Soul Eater has some of the most obnoxious fan service. Literally, the characters are like naked when they're the weapons in like the minds of whatever, the minds of like the characters holding the weapons. If I remember right, there's something like that. I just remember a lot of characters being naked a lot of the time.
But now, what do you think? How would you rate Soul Eater? How would you compare the anime and the manga? Share your thoughts.
But here's the thing. This is not, dude. This is not what. I feel like this is a different question than what was presented in the title. You know, this isn't a what happened. You didn't tell me what happened. I mean, you just kind of said that the anime ended and the manga kept going. You didn't tell me why. You didn't like do any research to say, okay, well, why did the manga or the anime end? Was it because of like funding? Because they caught up? Why did they end it? There's all these questions that I could fucking freely, I would love to know the answers to, like, right here, dude. I can fucking Google it. Oh, it caught up to the manga. See, here we go. It caught up to the manga. It just ended. They caught up to the manga, and then they just ended it. So that's why they ended it. But like, what is there gonna be like a Soul Eater remake? Like that's something you could have put in this video. Here we go. Soul Eater remake. No immediate plan. There we go. Here's something. 2020. Soul Eater anime remake announcement likely as new visuals surface. The final episode of Soul Eater anime aired more than 14 years ago when it came out in April 2008. The Studio Bones anime was a big hit with fans, but was over too soon. However, fans have something to look forward to as the 15th anniversary of Soul Eater anime approaches. A new key graphic has been released according to reports, and there's a special program on the anniversary that promises new projects. When was this? When did this come out? Ooh, yeah. So this is old. This is old. But we'll go to Reddit because that's always a good. It's going to get a reboot. Do you have any evidence? Nope. They literally say, I think and hopefully. No one's lying by saying that will happen. Just an assumption. See, that's kind of where my position is, though. After season 3 of that, which I think season 3 will end Fire Force. So it's going to air in April 25th, April 1st, 2025. Will Fire Force season 3 be the last season? We'll find a season of the anime. It will run in 2 parts. First airing in April, and then the second airing in January 2026. So, ooh. So, we got the ties to Soul Eater. I'm not going to play the audio because it'll probably get me striked. But we got season 3 coming. And then look at the moon. Look at the moon. They are going to instantly, dude, because it's going to tie into Soul Eater. I think they're going to reboot Soul Eater off of the popularity. And I see that even though this was 7 months ago, this is after the second season of Fire Force was already out. He could have done some lines where because Fire Force leads then into Soul Eater and it has a newer fan base that might not have known about the original, they might be able to. It's not out of the realm of possibility that they would reboot Soul Eater and maybe like not change anything, but like put like a newer shine on it to where it didn't feel as cringe as the original does, because the original wears its date on its shoulder. So therefore, boom, look at those correlations I made. Look at that little bit of research, barely any research, and I feel like I have more to answer the question of what happened to Soul Eater. We know that it caught up to the manga. I mean, the anime caught up to the manga and they had to end it. It's ended. Well, now that it just has been gone for a while, they never rebooted it. Well, then the creator moved on to start working on Fire Force. Fire Force is a prequel, and he doesn't even mention that it's a prequel to Soul Eater. It's a prequel to Soul Eater. It supposedly where it ends is before Soul Eater begins. It like leads to the world that is Soul Eater. Then after you have that correlation, okay, this to this, you then can make the logical jump that maybe the studio who's behind Fire Force will then take over and start rebooting Soul Eater. It is not a weird jump. I mean, is it a monumental task for them to pick up because of the fact that the original is so good? Absolutely. But at the same time, Fire Force is a pretty well done show. Whether you like the characters, whatever, I think the animation is pretty solid. So, ooh, I'm low storage space. Ooh, but these are things that I think that he could have added that easily could have made this question much better. And that's just kind of my big problem here with this video, is it just doesn't answer really any of the questions he presented. But yeah, that's what happened to Soul Eater without talking about what happened to Soul Eater.